A what?
I don't. Okay.
Thank you.
Dan, are you ready to go?
Yes, I am.
All righty, you'll hear the recording announcement in a moment.
Okay, welcome everybody to the April 16th, 2025 meeting of the Eastham Planning Board. This meeting will be live broadcast on local channel Act 18 and live streaming through the town's website at www.eastham-ma.gov. Tonight we have a couple of items on the agenda. We have an unusual application. This is a request for a waiver of site plan approval. And Paul, is it not also a waiver of special permit?
It's a waiver of site plan special permit,
Okay,
different category.
different category. Okay. So I'm going to call case number PB 2025-05 for 150 State Highway as shown on map 20, parcel 144, 150 Old State Highway LLC owners seek site plan approval waiver pursuant to Eastham zoning bylaws section 10.1.2 site plan approval, general provisions waivers to waive the requirements of section 10.2 site plan approval commercial of the town of Eastham zoning bylaw for the conversion of an existing cottage colony to a single family, two-family, multifamily, or seasonal workforce housing use permitted pursuant to section 4.7.2 of the Eastham zoning bylaws. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman. My name is Anthony Ponabianco. I'm counsel to the applicant 150 Old State Highway Cottages LLC and Gary Vecchio. I'm the manager of the LLC and the owner of the property is sitting to my right here. We are here, as you stated, for a site plan approval waiver under 10.1.2 of the general provisions. We're here because under the section 4.7.2 of the Eastern zoning bylaws, the proposed conversion of an existing cottage colony into a single family property to parcel it out is required to change from seasonal use to year-round use. That condition for the ZBA was approved on April 8th, 2025, and we are here seeking a site plan approval waiver under that bylaw. We believe we're the first applicants, so we understand in Eastham under 4.7.2 of that type of conversion. But with the guidance of Paul and Jackie, we want to say thank you again to helping us throughout that process and this process. We're seeking a site plan approval waiver because in this particular instance, there will be no changes to the site plan. There's no changes to the buildings. There's no changes to the parking. There's no changes to essentially any of the property whatsoever, except for the inclusion and updating to the septic system, which isn't required for site plan approval, but is necessary for the property to come into compliance. And one of the conditions that they have under 4.7.2 is that site plan approval is provided for, but in this instance, that we believe that site plan approval is unnecessary due to the fact that there are no significant impacts upon either the abutting land or even on this land in particular for what we're looking to do under the zoning bylaws, and that is the conversion from seasonal to year-round for the units therein. When it's in the eyes of the planning board, the look is to see if there will be alterations or reconstruction or structures that don't substantially change the relationship to the current structures on site. Here, there won't be any alterations, reconstruction, or new additional structures. So there could be no substantial change. And that is the determination that I believe the planning board has to look for to see whether or not a waiver is appropriate for site plan approval. Here, because there's no changes, there couldn't be any substantial changes, we would request that site plan approval waiver is granted. I point your attention to the proposed findings of facts and the proposed standard conditions. We've gone through that with the town and ourselves as well. We see that those are adequate and don't really have any concerns with those as the proposed conditions. But we're here to welcome any questions. I know a couple of you have been out to the property. We invite anyone that hasn't to come out to the property and see it themselves as well, because I think it's a great addition to the town, and we welcome that and invite all the town members here on any of the boards to come out for a review. But this is where we are in the process, and part of our condition for the ZBA is to go through and obtain site plan approval waiver. So that's what we're asking here today, and we're happy to take any questions.
Okay, planning board members, we have to make a determination as to whether or not this project should receive a waiver of site plan approval. And the applicant has stated that since no changes to the structures is proposed, that we should be in a position to perhaps waive site plan approval. I personally have looked at the site plan and gone through it in considerable detail. We have to identify the fact that there is some significant changes to the use of this property. The first one is that instead of one property owner, there's going to be 7 property owners. And as a result, we have a responsibility, in my opinion, to make sure that public safety is adhered to. I did find in the applications conflicting statements. On page 2 of your text, the first line towards the center paragraph, you say additional landscaping is planned, including a communal garden and local flora. Then immediately after that, you say no landscaping is planned. And then on page 3, under screening and landscaping, you make a statement that the project proposes additional landscaping to screen along the frontage and where the property abuts certain portions of Eastham Orleans Rotary to the extent possible. My concern is as follows. Your site plan shows a single access driveway entering from Old State Highway. I personally do not believe it is responsible planning for this planning board to waive site plan approval when I know in my mind, and I'm only one board member and I'd love to hear the other board members' input, that if you don't have an entrance and an exit that doesn't rely on one lane, you can't provide safe access for 7 residences, 27 cars, parking spaces, and 8 commercial docking facilities. It's just not feasible. I don't like the site plan the way it is. So my position would be, in order for us to get into the merits of the site plan, we cannot waive site plan approval. And I'm going to stop there at this point, and I'm going to go poll the board and see where they stand on this issue. So I'm going to start with Dave Hobbs.
I'm in agreement with you, Dan. I think I was there this afternoon, and when you pull in, I mean, it's going into this blind little tunnel. And it, like you say, it's only one passage wide. So somebody coming out at the same time, I'm sure they would probably, you know, maybe not crash into each other, but come close to it at least. There's no lines of sight to speak of. So I'm in agreement with you.
Thank you. Michelle.
Yeah, I guess I just have a question first. Can you talk more specifically about the current use of the property and the proposed use Because, you know, it's still 7 cottages and it's gonna be 7 cottages, and whether there's 7 owners or 1, there
Sure.
could be that same volume. So I'm just trying to get a sense for the volume.
Yeah, my name's
Change
Gary
and
Vecchione, you
Yep.
own the property.
Thanks.
And I would like to deconstruct his comments one by one. So we're
But
here-
you'll answer my question.
Absolutely,
Okay, thanks.
absolutely. So
No, please, excuse me. We're gonna have all the planning board members speak their minds before you get to speak again. That's procedure we've done throughout years and years of my being on this planning board. So you'll have your opportunity to respond to everybody's comments, but the comments of the board will continue at this point in time. So Michelle?
Yeah, so I had a question about the current use and the proposed use. And does that equal more cars or fewer cars? And I get seasonal and year round and
Sure.
what the difference is there, but
well, if you were to use the 10 or 12 seasonal, high seasonal rentals for the cottage that have been there for the last 100 years,
right,
there's X amount of cars per season.
yes,
If you expand it to year round, it's going to add some. But the interesting thing is that the cottages, there's 7 cottages, only 3 of them are year round. The rest are seasonal.
and they're not winterized currently, some of them,
Some of them are, some of them not.
and will you be winterizing the other ones?
Possibly, but we have, I don't know if you knew this, but we have CBA approval for a year-round use. But all that means is if you buy it, you can't rent it nightly, weekly, monthly.
Right, you need a year lease.
Airbnb. So we've got that in agreement. And now we just want to address safety issues and the planning board issues one by one.
Right, and so I do have a question, you know, along the lines of safety. You know, because I was at the property as well, and it is hard to see and get in and out of, and, you know, 2 cars passing, so, and you're not proposing any change. I don't know how you can do any change there, but
Well,
talk
we
about
do
that
have,
for a
we
minute.
do have room to make change. Unfortunately, it would trigger conservation issues as a lot of that area that you're looking for to have changed is within
Right,
either a velocity zone or a floodplain, et cetera. It would change the flavor and the feel of that property. My personal position is that the people that will come and go can do so safely. Before I bought the property, I talked to your fire chief, not the lady who's the fire chief now, but the previous one. And he said they had no problem with turning radiuses, getting fire trucks in and out of there. We also have access to come out through Collins Landing because we abut it, but we chose not to do that, and the CBA has asked us not to do that. So there's only about 600 feet of road that's been used again for 100 years.
Right.
Without an issue.
okay. That answered my questions, Dan. I'm
Okay.
not ready to vote. Thanks.
Rob Young?
I have to agree with you, Dan. I've been to the property a couple of times to walk through it. I understand that it's been around for 100 years. However, there are more cars now. And if it becomes year-round, especially with the boat docks, people bringing their boats in, taking their boats out, you have something with a trailer going in there and someone else is trying to come out, someone's got to back up. And the opportunity for a misfortune is great. That would be my comment, Dan.
Thank you. Brian Early?
Mr. Chairman, I have no questions.
Okay. We'll go on to,
Yeah, but I'm in concurrence with you.
okay. We'll go to Kevin Gatlin.
Yeah, when I first read the package, I was encouraged by the idea of going for year-round housing, but disappointed in hearing that not all of the units there are winterized, because the idea I like about year-round is being used year-round, because we certainly have the housing need, but be that as it may. My biggest concern is on the traffic and, the sheets that were handed out, they're here on the table when we first came in this evening. That is a real tough spot right there on the edge of the rotary. And I'm amazed that there aren't more accidents there now, even with nothing coming out of this site, because people are looking to the left to see who's in the rotary when they have the right to go and speed up to get ahead of the next guy, that kind of thing. And I can get worried about the sight lines and so forth of people coming down the highway, approaching the rotary. And to me, you need a two-way entrance and exit. You know, this has been a change of use. It's a good time for us to take a look at this. It's well within our rights to do so. And I need to hear some good answers on that. But I'm right there with you as far as that's concerned, but I'm not ready to vote yet.
Okay. David Purnell?
Mr. Chairman, I definitely concur. That is a very tight entrance. I was at the property yesterday. And much like my fellow board members, I don't really see much of a solution as far as widening that. But it is a dangerous entrance. I mean, there is the possibility of using some kind of electronic signal, you know, that states when somebody's exiting the property versus entering, to possibly you know, deter folks from having a head-on collision or having a nasty situation where one needs to back up with a boat trailer and, you know, impact traffic on, you know, granted it's the end of Old State Highway, but it still is a public rite of passage. So, I mean, with that, unfortunately, there's not much space at the property for this. And as the petitioner has said, most of this is under the jurisdiction of CONSCOM. So it's going to be very difficult to make modifications to the site that, you know, stay with our opinion of it being unsafe to enter and exit with that narrow entryway, and then trying to balance that with the concerns of the CONSCOM and their, you know, their stewardship of our natural resources. I agree with Kevin. I was excited to learn that this was going to be a year-round condo complex. Adding any inventory to our extremely low inventory in this town is a priority. However, I was also distressed, and with the condo that I visited yesterday, inside was definitely not one of the winterized ones. I believe it was about 60, almost 57 degrees when I got there, and had been pretty warm all day. And the inside of the condo was probably 45 degrees. So it's, I mean, with a mini split or two, maybe, but you've got 3 bedrooms in these condos. Those mini splits, from experience, I have them in my house. They're only rated up to a certain number of square feet based on their BTUs. If a bedroom door gets closed and there's no mini split in there, that bedroom's going to be cold. I really would like to see plans for winterization as a condition, but I am not ready to take a vote yet. Thank you.
Okay. Stephen Nunnally?
The only thing I noticed, I actually drove the site yesterday also. I noticed that the access was rather narrow. I also noticed that a number of units were tagged as sold. So are the ones that were sold, had they already been winterized? I'm just curious about it. I don't know if it's applicable to what we're doing here now, but.
The applicant can answer if he wishes.
I'd rather address all of the concerns at one time just to make it easier
Fine.
for everyone.
Okay, we'll go to Patricia Canavan.
I have the same issue, and I imagine that you've thought about this and kicked some ideas around. So I'd be interested in hearing about what you've thought about and maybe some solutions.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to recap my position. This was a summer cottage colony, primarily used by the family and summer guests. Add to that winter, add to that snow and ice, and add to that those on top of the single access. And I absolutely need to have site plan approval for this project. We are responsible for public safety. We are responsible for making a determination that the access both within the site and out beyond the site is safe for the public. That's part of the review criteria that we use. So with that, I will let the applicant respond to our questions. Board, we will need to take a vote tonight. We are either going to affirm and approve the waiver for site plan approval, or we are going to deny it. By denying the waiver, we are not denying any future site plan approval for this project. We are simply saying that we want to review the project under formal site plan review. So I don't want this to be interpreted as any form of denial other than denial of the request for a waiver of site plan approval. With that, I'll turn it over to the applicant.
If I may, I'm just going to kind of go down the row if possible. Just, I think it'd be easier to address those concerns. And to Mr. Gatlin's concern about the winterization of the properties, because of the nature of the ZBA bylaw, again, we're only here on a special permit, not for the entirety of the property, but just of what is there. But the special permit, the conversion, we would anticipate that all of the property owners, once it gets approved and parceled, would winterize it, because it is no longer therefore available for rentals. So summer rentals would be implausible under the bylaw. You're not allowed to do that. It's one of the conditions. It is either single family unit owners that are owner occupied, or for a long-term 12-month lease. So the winterization is certainly going to happen. It's simply, though, not a condition of the ZBA that is required to happen, but logistically speaking, it will happen. So, yeah, and we would want all of it. If we had to make it a condition of our condo documents, that's something for a discussion. We've provided our draft condo docs to the town as well. But for speaking of wanting that to happen, it will happen. So I'm comfortable in saying that and confident in saying that because it has to, more or less. Every buyer would have to do that. Whether or not that's taken on the onus of the LLC that owns them now versus the owners that then own each unit is another conversation, but that it's probably for the new unit owners to develop and maintain their property for their own use. Yeah. The second thing I wanted to address, which a lot of people had a question on, is the access portion of it. Again, I don't think this triggers site plan review approval because there are no structures or alterations changes. That's the condition that you're looking at. However, to make that into a consideration, a factor, we recognize that it's a narrow space, but there has been no issues or concerns for 100 years there. What we could do as a condition of your site plan approval waiver is have something akin to, you see consistently, as having mirrors on either side. It's not a public way once you get to the end of the road. It's a private, it would be private, it's a driveway. But a driveway that abuts into a way that might have concerns of sight lines and vistas, they're coming in and out, having mirrors so you could see cars coming into the driveway or cars coming out of the driveway. That's certainly something that we could do. And that type of condition, if it was proposed in the site plan approval waiver, wouldn't necessarily trigger the Concom approval for a singular post of that nature. If you're asking to widen the road under site plan approval, that would push back the entire, and have new plans, it would push back the entire process several months, and rather than the ability to do what ZBA has already approved, we're talking probably in interest and fees and changes and actual engineering, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we would ask that a simple solution to this, to address all the concerns, is you could have posts on either end that have mirrors, incoming, outcoming, so that addresses the concerns of visual access and make a safety for those that live there. The third thing that I think Chairman Copeland stated about the landscaping, that was probably, quite frankly, on me. There will be no hardscaping. There will be no changes to hardscaping. Minor landscaping, what we mean is simply some flowers. They're annuals, perennials of that nature, something to very minorly beautify what is already a beautiful and historic property, but not, huge tree sampling plantings or any hardscaping of any kind whatsoever. We actually have it in our draft condo docs and bylaws that there can be no hardscaping whatsoever. We want the property to remain as it is right now and maintain itself as it is right now, which is why we're asking for the site plan waiver approval. If we were going to make significant changes to the property or any changes to the structurals or what would be considered alteration or reconstruction, then of course we would ask for site plan approval, but we're not making any of those changes. There's no looking forward to making any of those changes. So simply a site plan approval waiver is what is appropriate, in our opinion, in this manner. We look forward to the comments and questions and concerns, but I think the solution that I proposed addresses the one primary issue that everyone has raised is coming in and out of the property. Is there a way to make that better? And I think that addresses that particular concern and comment. I'm happy to hear alternatives or suggestions or questions on that. But I think if you made that part of the conditions, a site plan approval waiver would still be appropriate in this instance.
And I would like to address some issues point by point, if I may. It's been mentioned several times that it's misfortunate that this is not going to be a year-round use, but it is in fact a year-round use. People who buy these cottages will winterize or not, but they can only use them year-round. It's not my job or responsibility to bring extra housing into the town, but the fact is I am bringing it into there because these cottages can all be used as year-round residences. They don't have foundations now. I've asked my site installer who's putting in the septic, GFM, very reputable organization who destroyed the mansion over in Chaquasit, very well thought of, to put, give me a price in putting foundations under these. So these things are in the works, but I can't possibly pay $4 million for the property, $30,000 a month in interest, and then put foundations under each one. So what we do is we lessen the price or the sales price of each unit and then let them choose or not choose. One of the requirements of getting the ZBA was we have to promise or put in the deed restriction and a covenant. It's in the deed that these are year-round use only. So I think that's a misstatement as far as that we're not doing that. We are doing that. That's going to be the place that I'm going to spend the rest of my life. Hopefully my ex-wife, my children, they're all going to live there. So we have those plans in place. We talk about traffic, but I can't understand how you would say that that was in any way dangerous since it's a dead-end street and it comes in off the neck. It is, the traffic assimilates into the rotary in a very easy, slow, and methodical way. We talked, yeah, so we're on a dead-end street. I can tell you that I've had conversation with some of your town officials about the possibility of maybe buying some of our land so that we can close off the access to Collins Landing. Now, I know that's a big subject to handle right now, but the fact is we do have room to come from the end of our property to the neck, but it will destroy the look of that place. So if this board chooses to do that, I will just say, you will destroy it. You will destroy the look. There are 100-year-old cedars that are there. There are 100-year-old cypress and what's the other one? Yeah, cedars. And those will all have to come down to widen that pathway or the entryway. I would prefer to go to the police chief and the fire chief and get the records for the last 20 years and find out if there's been any concerns there when seasonal traffic has been at its high. And when I bought that place, every one of those cottages, 20 bedrooms, were filled for 8 to 10 weeks solid. So 20 bedrooms, it was represented to me through Laura Schofield, who designed the septic, that each bedroom represents 2 people. So that's 40 people have used that property, came and went 40 cars a day, 30 days a month, 1,200 trips a month, times 3 is 4,000 cars. If you do this for the entire year, my calculations are you double that because you take that amount of traffic and you spread it out over a year, it's more trips, but it's less per day. I guess you would ask yourself, if you have 4 people living in your home, have each of those 4 people use your driveway and gone into town every single day. So I don't think that's an issue. I think it's a non-issue that can be addressed. And whether we come on the east side of the septic or the west side, according to my little scale here, we have 20 feet to give a 2-way passage, but it's going to destroy that place. I still think I can market it, but I just don't think it's necessary. And if you'd give me the time to prove that, I would ask you to reconsider. Almost done. The sold units, I put a sold sign on my cottage because it's off the market. They don't make signs that say off the market or under deposit, so it's sold. I don't want people who go down there to think that the property is available. The cottage to the right of that, my ex-wife. She's not watching, so I can tell you she's sick. She's going to use the property all summer long. It's sold in my eyes. There's another one where it's sold, it's off the market. So we have 4 units. That's that's what the signs mean. Now, I just have to address this because you do control my financial future over the next few months. And when Anthony says it'll cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, it'll not only do that, it'll change the flavor of this property forever. And this board will be responsible for that. So that's why I'm just asking to talk this out. I forgot where I was going with that. Sorry. Okay, some of those trees are in a floodplain. That means that we have to trigger another filing with Concom. Eastham is one of the only conservation commissions that has a 100 buffer zone trigger, so that if it's 100 feet away or up to the, let me back up. In average town, if you go up to the buffer border of a floodplain, there's no buffer. Eastham has 100 feet. So according to the map, some of those trees are going to be within the buffer zone and the floodplain. And to get them to come out, they would have to agree to that. I suggest, why can't we trim them back heavily instead? I don't want to take those out. Or if you insist I take them out, maybe I could get a tree spade and move them somewhere on the site. What I'm saying is that there are mechanisms in place that we could address each and every one of these things. And rather than just one fell swoop say, we want a site plan review, I think we can address these things with the waiver by agreeing to those things ahead of time. This past winter, I came into the town hall for a meeting and I looked at one of the tables and it said planning board postponed today because it didn't have a quorum. Well, when you're paying $30,000 or $40,000 a month in interest, 1 month it costs you $40,000. So each month that you put off means something. Oh, I know where I was going this, and I'll end with this. I'm big on Facebook. I think it's the equivalent of what yesterday's town crier would be. And you just get a lot of information. You can give information, you get information. And I've read all kinds of things about me on that page, including that I'm from New York, I'm very wealthy, and I'm in a lonely fireplace, which is anything but the truth. We offered to the town, we didn't have to do it, we offered certain deed restrictions and covenants so that the footprint of those cottages never changes. The shape of the cottages, the outline, the look, the bungalow design never ever changes. That was my gift to the town. My father had a cottage here in the 1960s. He came straight from Iwo Jima to come, well, not straight because that was the 40s, but he recuperated in Eastham. He enjoyed the town. He enjoyed the seaside on King Street Beach Road. I talked to Peter Fogg, I think that's his name, about buying a cemetery plot for myself because I want to be buried in that cemetery. I want to be buried in this town. I don't have a lot of money. I just know a lot of people who have money. I have a really good idea that I'm asking you to champion, and please don't cut my legs off underneath me and cut my Achilles tendon, because if you make this go longer and longer, we can't put the septic in. Right now, we have a plan to go in end of May for the septic. If this project goes 2 more months for more designs and more approvals, it's going to cost, we're going to lose that guy, and that's GFM. So there are repercussions for your decisions. I'm just asking that we hash this out tonight and we address all your concerns in a waiver with, I don't know if there's such a thing as a conditional waiver, but I'm just saying we can address these things. I'm not an out-of-towner. I'm not a wash ashore. My family's been here forever from my father on. If you know my name, you know my family. Some of them are proud of me, some of them aren't. But, you know, I don't choose my methods. I just try to protect the people I love. And I love this property, and I'm asking you to help me go forward without adding layer and layer of bureaucracy. Thank you.
Is there anybody in the audience or online that wants to speak on this application? Having heard none, I am going to try a motion. Motion can pass, the motion can be denied.
Can I speak before you make that motion, please?
Yes, you can.
Okay. So Anthony here came to my rescue months ago, and I love the guy. but I have my own mind and I know what I need to do and what I want to do. And what I'm going to say is, this is just an indicator of what our plan would be if you vote against this. If you deny the waiver, we're going to appeal the waiver in Superior Court. And then everyone is going to have to just give cause as to why you denied it. Rather than go that route, I'm just asking that we keep going with this and talk and talk and talk. And let me address your issues outside of a site plan, because I've gone to the fire chief. The police have no records of problems here. I don't know what else to offer you other than destroying and doing a straight earth approach to that property and destroying mature plantings that, you know, somebody planted 100 years ago. I can't see it. It just goes against my grain. Thank you.
If I may, I'll be very brief, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman.
Please
if I
do.
may. The intent of this site plan is to protect the town as a whole and to protect the abutters relative to zoning compliance. There's no zoning changes, so zoning compliance will remain as it is. The abutters are not impacted at all by the importance here and the change from seasonal to year round. The only change truly is the ability of those owners to exist in this town and for people to exist in this town on that property in a year-round residence. That's what the special permit's for. That's truly all that's before the board here tonight. Any conditions that would assist you, we would ask before a vote be taken, be discussed, and we be able to consider, because as Mr. Vecchione said, we're absolutely willing to listen and to talk with the town, as I think Paul and Jackie would attest to. Not that I'm asking you to attest tonight, but we're happy to always work with the town. We'll listen to conditions, listen to the considerations. Our changes from on the ZBA and the conditions that were put in there before, we went through numerous conversations with the town before they existed and put into paper and voted on by the ZBA. We're asking for the same thing tonight. We heard some of the concerns that you had. I hope that we address them, but we're willing to listen to conditions as well and really hope we can get this move forward. We do think that it is absolutely within the planning board's power, but also is a necessity of the planning board. I think it is what you're instructed to do is to agree to a waiver when you meet the conditions that no structural or alterations are going to happen and that no relationship to the site is going to change. Anything other than that, outside of that consideration, we believe is outside of the zoning bylaws of purview of what you're allowed to do, and it would be overreaching. That's why we think it in a site plan approval waiver is not just necessary in this, but is warranted.
Okay, you've had your chance to speak. I'm going to close the public hearing part of this application. I am going to propose a motion. The motion would be to deny the applicant's request for waiver of site plan approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor, and I'm going to poll the board individually. Dave Hobbs?
I will deny it.
Yes, okay. Michelle?
Yeah, I do want to make one comment, Dan. I approve the motion, or I agree to vote for your motion. And abutters are impacted when there's year-round living versus seasonal living. So they are impacted, lighting, traffic, etc. And I know you're talking back and forth, but I live near year-round people and I live near seasonal homes. And there is a difference. So I just want to say that I think we deserve the right to take a look at the site plan as you consider it, as you think about it, understanding that it will take more time. So I approve the motion. Thank you.
Rob Young. Rob?
Yeah, I got it, Dan. I approve the motion.
Okay. Brian Early.
I approve.
Kevin Gatlin.
Approve the motion.
All right. David Purnell.
Approve the motion.
All right. We do not have Stephen Nunnally voting. We do not have Patricia Canavan, and chair votes aye. The motion is approved to deny the waiver as applied for by the applicant. Thank you for your time tonight. Okay, we have other business tonight. I gotta get my agenda. Where did it go?
You want this, Brian? Okay.
Paul,
Yes.
we are going to now go into the changes in our guidelines. As we stated before, the guidelines are for our use and approved by our board. They do not have to go to town meeting. And as a result, we are free to hold a hearing, and I'm trying to find my notice, and where did it go? Paul, do you want to read that? Here it is. I'm sorry. Okay, so we are now going to continue our public hearing, and this is for proposed amendments to the Eastham zoning bylaw and general bylaw pursuant to the provisions of Massachusetts General Law, Sections 40A, Section 5. The Eastham Planning Board will hold a public hearing at 5 p.m. on Wednesday, April 16th, 2025 in the Earl Mountain Room at Town Hall, 2500 State Highway, Eastham, Mass, to take public comments or proposed additions to the Eastham zoning, the Planning Board rules and regulations. And this is to see if the Planning Board will vote to adopt design and performance standards for the Eastham Corridor Special District. Paul, I guess I'll turn it over to you to do a presentation. My understanding is that perhaps we will continue the hearing till next month. For several reasons, there are some amendments that are going into this regulation, for one, and number two, it will allow us to see how the town reacts at town meeting with respect to the Eastham Corridor Special District. Paul, it's your show.
Okay, thank you, Dan. There we go. Yeah, so thank you. So this is the public hearing to discuss the planning board design and performance standards. So just background, as we all know, there's basically two things happening this year with zoning. Well, three, but we have the ADU bylaw, but for tonight's purposes, proposed amendments to the ECSD bylaw, so the actual zoning bylaw itself. The other part is this other document, the planning board design and performance standards. So it's really meant to be a supplemental document in support of the zoning bylaw. And where we got to this was basically when we first, and I should back up a second, Mary Nee, the chair of the zoning task force, is here. Mary, welcome you to comment. So when the zoning task force and staff were working on this, we just realized there was a lot of content that we wanted to include, but some of it just really didn't make sense to put in the zoning bylaw, embed it into the zoning bylaw itself. There was some just content wise, and then just kind of the size and scope of what that would do to the zoning bylaw and getting that through town meeting. So we kind of made the strategic decision to break up certain components and put them into this other planning board document. As Dan mentioned, these design guidelines, standards don't need town meeting approval. That gives the board some flexibility to work with this document over time and shape it, and really just has to be done through a public hearing like we're doing tonight. So again, as things change, we can change this more easily than the zoning bylaw, which has some advantages just because I'll go on record right now. There will be some flaw, hopefully minor, in the bylaw that we present. I mean, there's always something that you don't anticipate, or you put it into practice, it doesn't go as, so having this document to kind of fill in some blanks, or if there's a gray area, to help guide the board and applicants to say, okay, you didn't really get to it in the bylaw, but here's a supplemental document that colors in the lines a little bit more, so we know where we were meant to go, even if it's not clear in the bylaw. So it's a help document. And also, as things change, new methods, new situations come up, sometimes we can maybe address that appropriately through this document rather than have to go back and open up the bylaw. So it gives the board some flexibility. The other thing it does is also put some teeth into the standards. So right now in the current bylaw, we reference design standards from the Cape Cod Commission, which is basically these two documents. It's really just broad language that basically says, basically, if in doubt, go look at these documents for guidance. There's not really any teeth into it, and it doesn't really give the direction to the board or to applicants what to do with it, or even if they really actually need to adhere to them. So again, putting this into a document and putting some language in that strengthens it and really just directs it that, yes, these go hand in hand with the bylaw. And really what this all boils down to is the majority of the content that are in the proposed document is really already in the commission document and already kind of what we're been working with, but in a kind of unofficial capacity. So there's not a lot of new content. We're just formalizing it and putting it into an Eastham document. But again, it will put some teeth into it, and so that the board can rely on these standards more heavily. And again, this all goes back to, you hear me say this a lot, the role of the board is shaping these projects when they come before you. Do they meet the zoning bylaw? Yes or no? But then is there room for improvement? So the standards are meant to supplement and give some further detail on certain things. So just kind of broadly, the design objectives, these are all spelled out in the document, but again, it's going beyond the zoning bylaw, kind of the legalese. This document can be a little more, hopefully it is little more user-friendly, but to fill in some of the blanks, paint the picture a little more clearly about what we're trying to do, what we're trying to achieve as overall design goals. And so a lot of this is just really reinforcing the language that you've seen and what we went over at the last public hearing about trying to get traditional New England architecture, high quality design, make sure the materials that are being used are traditional or appropriate to the site, and so forth, making sure that we can accommodate a good mix of uses, a range of uses. Very important to have that mixed use of the missing middle, get the affordable and workforce housing in there. So again, this document is just it's language to reinforce and guide both the applicant and the developers and property owners. So there is language, as I said, we're trying to make sure that the shortcoming that we have now is that there isn't really clear direction that you have to use these references to the commission guidelines. We want to make sure that it's clear that you work with the bylaw and then you also go to this document when you're putting your project together to make sure you're covering all the bases. And so it's best practices. It would be applicable to any project in the ECSD that triggers site plan review, but we also want to have this as a document. Like you might have a project that doesn't need to come to planning board, but here's a resource to say, this is what this is what we're shooting for, this is what we'd like to see. So to serve multiple functions. Again, these are minimum standards, so obviously we encourage folks that want to go above and beyond and do more of a good thing. That's always welcome. So just a little, to put this in context, what we have now is not quite conventional zoning because we have, the ECSD did kind of take some first strides towards what we're doing now. But, basically your conventional zoning, it just separates the uses, industrial here, residential here, so forth. It's one size fits all, and it doesn't really achieve what we've been trying to do with utilizing land in the most beneficial way possible, make the most of what we have. So this kind of a tier here. So you move to form-based code, which we've been talking about, which really focuses on the physical forms of the buildings and the sites. What is it going to look like? Not as much emphasis on the use. Obviously, we're still going to separate out incompatible uses into town, but we want to focus on what is it going to look like on the outside. And then the design and performance standards build on that. So it's what's it going to look like, but then the design standards are really what is the character of the site and what is the look and feel and what context is the site going to operate on in terms of the adjacent properties and impact on the street network and so forth. So it's a layered approach.
So Paul, I have a question.
Yeah.
How enforceable is that if somebody chooses to come in and use building materials that do not fit this at all? And can we adjudicate that and say, hey, it doesn't fit the standard?
Yes, so we
Okay.
basically, on that front, we're basically spelling out in the bylaw and reinforcing in this document that you have to use traditional materials or alternate materials that mimic the look and feel of traditional.
Right.
And I just will point out, we did put some caveats in the bylaw, so have some flexibility that you can use.
Stucco or something.
Yeah, I mean, you can use vinyl siding
Oh.
in certain areas where it's not gonna be, facing a public way or something at the board's discretion. So just to be reasonable about, there might, because obviously it's financial factors come into play. So, but we're really trying to enforce that we want high quality materials that either the real thing or it's gonna mimic the look and feel on the outwardly facing areas. So. Excuse me. So just going to go through the basic components, kind of contents. So what's in here, again, it's mimicking the content that you're seeing in the bylaw. So it's getting into the building components. And these are really, again, these are tips, best practices for making sure the site and the buildings fit into the context. So making sure that the designs that come in are breaking up the building massing, the facades, using porches and smaller accessory pieces, breaking down. So we don't want big rectangular box buildings. So again, this is just pointing the way to how to get to a nice design, breaking up the roof forms. We talked about the building materials. And the facades, again, breaking them up with projections and setbacks. Again, a lot of the stuff in the bylaw is going to tell you specifically, you gotta, every X amount of feet, you gotta have the building step back or project. But then layered on top of that is, okay, then what do we do with materials and things like that to enhance it? The document will go through parking layout and landscaping. Again, reemphasizing that safe circulation, making sure we have bike and pedestrian amenities, consolidating curb cuts and dispersing the parking. The bylaw itself is going to prevent or prohibit new parking in the side and in the front of the buildings. So they help you to the side or the rear and screened. But again, these are like tips on how to get the best possible design. Sustainability obviously is a major concern. This whole area is within the Water Resource Protection District. So there are a lot of layers to this. And as projects come in, we're going to get into there's going to be the ECSD bylaw, this document, another section of the bylaw about the groundwater, which has limits on how much pervious surface you can have and everything. So that's why it's important. We feel like it's important to have these documents because there's going to be a lot of stuff going on when we get into these commercial developments. There's a lot of overlap with regulations. There's environmental stuff. There's so again, we're trying to make sure we have all the tools at our disposal. The sections on lighting and signage. Again, emphasizing that we want uniformity, harmony with the lighting, the site, and it talks about site lighting and building lighting. We want these things to be in harmony, have good, things to match and line up for overall design. Make the most of the signage with the least amount of signage. Make the most of the least amount of signage, if that makes sense. And this is in the bylaw, but we're repeating it in the guidelines also that, we did propose prohibiting certain signs. Again, to keep with the look and feel of a traditional kind of New England village center. So that's reinforced in the guideline document. There's a section on outdoor amenity spaces. So in the zoning bylaw that's proposed in one of the dimensional tables, there is a minimum requirement, a minimum percentage for a site to have some sort of outdoor amenity spaces. And this guidance, this standards document basically goes through and elaborates what that is. So basically there's three types of amenity spaces. There's a civic space, publicly oriented private spaces and then straight up private open spaces. So depending on what the project is, you'd fit into one of these categories. And it's really just to make sure that we put this in here to make sure that these sites do have a balance among the uses and the amenities and how the site's going to fit into the context. So these could be very different forms or combination of forms, but it's making sure that there's room for, maybe it's just a front yard, maybe it's a garden plot, maybe it's a community garden, maybe it's a full-on public park if it's a public-private site development. So there's a number of combinations that this could have, and it kind of helps solve some of you can use the outdoor amenity space to solve some of your site issues. Again, there's going to be limits on the amount of impervious surface you can have just because of the groundwater issues. So you're not going to be able to pave as much as you may want to, but you have to do the outdoor amenity space anyway. So you start to layer these things. Well, we could do grasscrete or whatever, but also like we have to have some sort of park area anyway. So these things are designed to kind of overlap, serve multiple purposes. So the design guidelines document itself basically has kind of a menu of this will demonstrate and kind of set examples of the different types. Again, as I said, it might be a community garden, it might be a little and maybe all you need is just a little front little garden yard space. It could be outdoor amenity space like a sidewalk, cafe area. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, open space, but it could be. So this guidance document is basically just to kind of present the menus so that when the developers are putting their plans together, they can come into this board and say, okay, we went through this document and say, I think this combination of outdoor amenity spaces works with what we're doing. And we're kind of all on the same page. So the other component in this document is the performance standards. So again, it all kind of intersects, but the performance standards is a little bit different. That section is really supposed to add additional detail for how a site's going to function dependent on the uses. I know I said, kind of form-based code, we're not so much concerned with the use, but there is going to be circumstances where something's going to come in and we want to make sure that technically it's allowed, the use is allowed, but how is it going to actually function in reality? So the performance standards are here, again, to help guide and set the expectations about how is this going to happen. And a lot of it really deals with, potential, how the site's going to function. So delivery services, where's the trash receptacles going to go? How are you going to get in and out for delivery and trash pickup? If you're having a facility that's going to have some, if it might be a movie theater or a theater or something like that, we're going to have pickup, drop-offs, hours of operation. How is that going to work so that there's some standards in there that set the bar, like, so folks know coming in, like, and in contact with what's going on in surrounding. So the surrounding uses, so parking, intensity of parking, kind of offsetting with what other uses are going on. So peak time and so forth. And again, a big thing is just minimizing potential detrimental impacts by being able to set minimum standards right up front. So again, it kind of reduces the need to kind of discuss and kind of haggle about certain things because you have to meet the standard going into this, unless there's extenuating circumstances. But so I'll just go back a second. Again, just to kind of summarize, this is designed to be a help document to set the expectations so that when applicants come in, we can streamline this process to the board's benefit and to the applicant's benefit so that we set the expectations and there's not a lot of, it's basically like I've been saying, is here's the recipe. You follow the recipe, come in with your plans, demonstrate that you followed the recipe, you're meeting the expectations, you're meeting the minimum performance standards, so forth. You're addressing things up front, and then hopefully there's not a whole lot to discuss because, some minor tweaking, whatever. But at least we're starting off on with some baseline agreement. So I'll just say, next step, and I'm happy we can circle back through and go through any questions, but just kind of next steps. The document, I still am fine tuning it just with the layout and the format. There's some images that I still want to fix up, and this kind of just the resolution of some of the images need to be fixed up, but basically the content is in place. However, I think it just makes sense to keep this hearing tonight open until next month, because as Dan said, we don't, hopefully the bylaw passes and everything, but you never know, but let's just keep things open. If we need to adjust anything based on what happens at town meeting, we have that flexibility again, because we may want to use this document in a different format depending on what happens at town meeting. And then just kind of, as I said, more practically, I just need a little more time to kind of finish it up.
Oh, can I ask a quick?
Yeah.
May I ask a quick question? So just out of curiosity, what is the standard for passage at town meeting? Is it 2/3, a supermajority?
For this, it would be
Okay.
2/3.
Okay, just want to know. Thank you.
So I'll just leave it at that, and happy to circle back. And obviously, this will give the board some more time to go through this document. Again, the purpose of the hearing is to questions, comments, things that, don't make sense maybe, and room for improvement. Get it all out there now. We can continue to work on it. So,
Okay, this is a public hearing, so I'm going to run down the board, and then I'm going to see if there's anybody in the public that would like to speak. So I'll start with Dave Hobbs.
No comments.
Okay, I will go to Michelle Vaughn.
Yeah, no additional questions now. Thanks, Dan.
Okay, we'll go to Rob Young.
Nothing additional from me, Dan.
Okay, Brian Early.
So what we're saying is that we're going to keep this portion of the meeting open till next month, is that,
That is correct.
and then add in, yeah. That's all I have.
Okay, and we've got Kevin Gatlin.
No questions or comments.
Okay, David Purnell.
Nothing for the group.
Okay, Stephen Nunnally.
I have nothing to add. No.
Okay, and Patricia Canavan.
No questions.
And I don't have any questions. Is there anybody in the audience or on Zoom that would like to raise a question or talk about this particular? Please come to the podium. Thank you.
Chair of the zoning task force. I have a very bad cold. Thankfully, wrong. I don't say much. I just want to make 2 points. It is in the bylaw, it's also reiterated in this design guideline. I think we are already starting to see the notion of having a requirement that applicants come and meet with Paul and to review the projects before they come to the board.
Excuse me. They have, it has proved, at least in a couple instances, Paul has referenced to me, that has been very useful. And so we think that that's going to help this board and hopefully minimize conflict and et cetera. The other point, I think, with the design guidelines, and something we spoke with the town of Provincetown, because they're facing this quite a bit, is formula businesses who want to come into town. They have very specific design guidelines, and you can't prohibit any ownership in our zoning proposals. If a national chain wanted to come in and buy a property, that is their right. But we think it's really appropriate that if businesses like that are in town, that the look and feel of those businesses reflect Eastham and not necessarily a national brand. So this tool will give this board quite a bit of leverage in terms of managing that in the future. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask one quick question
Sure.
to clarify on that? I thought there was a deed restriction based on the tea time purchase that prohibits any kind of food service or things like that in that particular area.
That's just for the Tea Time property
Okay,
itself,
so
not for the entire,
Not for the entire
not
corridor.
the
Okay.
entire corridor.
Okay, perfect. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else, either on Zoom or in the audience? If not, I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing for the Planning Board Design and Performance Standards Eastham Corridor Special District, known as ECSD, to our regularly scheduled May meeting of, and I need a date,
May 21st.
May 21st, 2025. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor, we can just say aye. This is,
Aye.
Aye.
okay, very good, thank you. Okay, the next item is, what is, we need this option for remote attendance participation. We have to vote on this, Paul?
No.
No, I didn't think so. Okay, so is there a motion
Oh,
to
no.
approve the minutes of March?
Mr. Chair, I have one other piece of business.
Go
before I get to
ahead.
So this goes back to the zoning, the actual zoning bylaw. So we had our public hearing last month. I know there were some comments by Mr. Zender about concerns with the
Holmes Road.
residential uses in the trade park. And then I did get some feedback from some concerned business owners on that area, and we met with them. So I think it's a valid concern, and the task force talked about this at their last meeting. So what I wanted to discuss was just the option of bringing an amendment at town meeting floor to address that concern. So technically, we can't change because we closed the hearing last month, so we can't make any more changes to the bylaw unless we do it at town meeting. So logistically, it has to happen at town meeting. But specifically, what staff and the task force is recommending is that we in the use table, we remove the residential components. So the cottage colony, the multifamily, and the mixed use, remove those as principal uses in the trade park district. And we insert mixed use as a accessory use in the trade park. And what that will do is eliminate that concern that a developer could come in, buy up a bunch of industrial land, which was limited, and do all housing on a large scale. And I think that makes sense until we are able to do some more planning on Holmes Road and the Trade Park District. Maybe have more clarity on what the future use of that undeveloped parcel, which is really going to unlock the key to that's the whole kind of future of that area anyway. So work with the folks down in that area again. So I think that makes sense. I think that's a valid concern. But by moving the mixed use into accessory, it doesn't close the door entirely on having housing there. So it still gives some options for accessory. So anything, it's got to be tied to an industrial use. So it adds some, again, it doesn't close the door on the residential component, but it puts it at a context and a scale that'll be, I think appropriate in the near term. So technically what we do is just at town meeting, we would make the motion to approve the proposal subject to those specific changes I just highlighted.
Do we have to vote on this today?
Yeah, I won't ask for a vote. There's one more component. So there's that change, and then a slight change to one of the dimensional tables. We talked about outdoor amenity spaces in the presentation a minute ago. In the bylaw, there's a table that lays out what the minimum area in each sub-district is for outdoor amenity spaces. And in Trade Park, there's a 10% requirement. And again, as we were talking through this, the recommendation would be to remove that minimum requirement for the Trade Park because the nature of the uses that are happening in the Trade Park aren't going to really necessitate having an outdoor amenity space now that we're taking the residential component out. So there's not really going to be restaurants or retail stores, things where people are coming in and out and lingering there on the site where you're going to want that. And from a more practical standpoint, and this is what we heard back from one of the business owners, and from going down there, basically everyone's maxing out 100% of their site for the building, to park cars, to store equipment and everything, and that would take up a lot of limited space. So we would still preserve in the bylaw that if redevelopment projects happen, they still have to have their buffering and their basics, landscaping along the street and the setbacks. But it would remove the necessity to have to like have a lot of square footage taken up. So,
So no picnic tables in front of the loading dock?
I mean, they're all, I mean,
No-
they're free to,
no
anyone's
playground
free to
sets.
do that stuff, but it's not, it's not a requirement. And again, these are things that we can revisit later on after we get a better sense of, do some more planning on that trade park district. I anticipate that we would go in and then do further refinements to the actual zoning. So yes, Dave.
I was just curious, you talk about a area of land at the end of Holmes Road. And I'm just curious, how many acres is that kind of, I mean, roughly, I mean.
It's like, yeah, it's around 22 acres down there. It's a huge parcel.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we've had some preliminary discussions with the owner there. So, I mean, they're aware of the zoning and the concepts and the ideas. So, you know, they're receptive to it, which is great. And that's a great starting point to like, we have to get in there and have those discussions to see what is the future. And then we'll be able to see, like, do we want to go back in and maybe we carve out, if we know what the future use is, then we can maybe carve out maybe it's a different sub-district where we know this side's industrial, going to stay, this side's going to be mixed use or whatever, or we can fine tune it and still have this hybrid approach, but at least we know what the layout of the site's going to be, if it's going to be subdivided or not, or however. So and we struggled with that. The task force struggled with how do we accommodate that housing without knowing what the future is and where the road is. If we draw a line on a map, you just know the road ends, they're going to subdivide it a different way, and then we're back to like redrawing the map again. So it was a difficult discussion. I think the comments at the hearing about that did have some merit. And so basically, so where we left off was, this was the staff recommendation. The task force voted to endorse this. The select board, it kind of got to the select board ahead of the planning board, just unintendedly, but they're in support of that, doing this amendment at town meeting. So what I would ask, we didn't put this as a vote on the agenda, but what I would ask is if the board endorses this concept, I can carry that forth to town meeting. If there's any questions, it'd just be nice to say select board, planning board, task force, all support this.
Paul,
Yeah.
I had a question.
Yeah.
You use the term accessory use for multifamily. There isn't a multifamily developer who's going to want to develop an industrial use simultaneously with either affordable or just residential use. So how's that going to work?
Well, it would just allow the multifamily component to be, again, they may not want to. It's just there. So we already allow apartments above commercial space. So essentially that is a mixed use building. So if someone wants to put a apartment on the second floor, they can do that. We're just adding in the option that if they come up with a design that works for them, that they could do some sort of mixed use, something beyond just a couple of apartments. So if they want to break up the property and put some apartments detached or something, it's just having the option there.
So if somebody came in with just a residential use, is it or is it not allowed by
You couldn't,
the code?
no, it has to be accessory to a a trade use that's there. So you
No. Okay.
just be, I'm gonna come in and do put an industrial building in there, and I think I can make room for a mixed use building and it works functionally and everything. The option is there to accommodate that.
So this is significant in terms of the viability of promoting residential use in that district, in my opinion, but that's okay. Yeah, I don't have anything else. It just seems to me it's under those constraints, less likely to happen.
Yeah, well, I guess where we're trying to go is we don't based on the concerns and the feedback we heard, we don't want to have residential as a principal use happening there until we know more, until we do more planning. So we're trying to limit that or prohibit that. So this is just an option to have as an accessory component to an industrial use, which again, it may not,
If you think about it, the Purcell property is adjacent to industrial use.
Mhm.
Okay. I don't have anything else. Anybody else?
I'm in favor of going to town meeting with this.
Is there anybody in the audience that wants to speak on the planning board design and performance standards for the Eastham Corridor Special District? Well, I think we asked already, but I just want to make sure. Okay, we're all set on that. I guess the next item is the minutes.
Still no.
I'm sorry?
I just said, the answer was still no.
Okay.
just,
let's,
so there's no one on the board that's opposed to
object.
the,
No.
No
okay,
objection.
great,
Favor,
thank you
no.
very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item, minutes for the March 19th, 2025, 5 p.m. meeting. Does anybody have any suggested changes or corrections?
I do, Dan. At the meeting adjourned section, I wasn't here at the end. So if these have to be absolutely accurate, did not vote to adjourn the meeting. So I was not here for that. And no problem.
Okay. So
Other than that,
is there a motion to approve?
One thing, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
my name is spelled Earley.
Oh, yeah.
I just want to restate that. Thank you. I'll teach that, yeah.
right.
There's one other one, with the meeting adjournment. It also says that Rob Young had seconded,
And he wasn't there.
but he wasn't there.
That's a problem.
No, he was not.
Well, on the front page, it says he was absent.
I wasn't at the meeting.
Well, then how did you second it?
I'm amazing, but I'm not that amazing, Dan.
Good for you, Rob.
So who did?
We're gonna. Dan, we'll have to go back and watch the video to make
All right.
sure
So then let's put this
which
off.
of you got your
Let's put-
second in very quickly.
Yeah, let's
All
put
right,
this
so
off.
let's put this off and we'll vote on these minutes at the May meeting. Okay,
You can vote on them subject to those changes.
Yeah, let's do that, Dan.
Yeah,
All right. Is there a motion to approve
so moved.
Some,
the minutes of March 19th? So move second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So,
Any-
we're gonna jump in. So this is why the records are sometimes hard. We need a motion, a second, and then a vote.
Yes.
Okay, I'll move it.
so much faster that way.
Michelle will move it.
Thank you.
David will second it.
Thank you. Here we go.
And we all vote. Yeah.
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
Aye.
very good. Anything else? Paul, or
We need a motion for adjournment.
let's have a motion. It sounds like you should make it since you thought of it.
Come on, Dave.
I make a motion that we adjourn. at,
Second.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
6:17.
All right, all approved? Aye.
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 Anybody else?
Aye.
There was no second, though.
I
A
second.
second. No, Brian.
Brian seconded.
Seconded it. Dave.
Dave.
Aye. I
Dave.
was.
You have to use your name from now on.
Okay.
Babes.
I will physically
Complicated
be
stuff,
there at
yes.
the next meeting.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
We'll see.
See you guys.